All right, we're back with part 3. No formalities this time. I could not be bothered, so I hope you guys enjoy part 3.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Immediately following the crushing defeat from Bakugo to Ida, and then, the winners obviously being Deku and Uraraka, we pretty much just cut to the scene where everybody's just kind of done with school, and Izuku's finally able to walk towards Uraraka and formally be able to really apologize. Obviously he said sorry before, but this time he's really gonna be like, hey, sorry about that. I have these tendencies. I'm really sorry, hormones. And Uraraka looks at him, she chuckles and she's like, yeah, I already forgave you. Don't worry about it. Just don't let it happen again. She's teasing Deku, right? And the dude is just like, all right, sounds good, Uraraka. From here, he just pretty much goes on to, how do I put this? Just be like, all right, well then I'll catch you later, right? They both dap each other up and then they end up going off in their separate directions. When Deku gets home, he pretty much just gets there to see Aizawa just passed out on the couch. Deku sets his things down and Aizawa just looks at him and says, hey, saw your performance today. He doesn't even open his eyes. He's like, you did a great job. You're proving that I was right to bet on you. Deku smiles and, he goes towards his room only to, he turns on his monitor. He puts his lotion on his desk. He puts his headphones on. He begins to take off his pants and then he puts on his new pair because he's about to pass out. And, he just needed to moisturize his hands and arms. You know what I mean? The dude needed to relax after a long day at UA, right? And from here, he just goes to sleep. He wakes up the next day, bida boom, normal school stuff, nothing interesting happens for about a week or so, I would say, considering how the MHA timeline flows, right? Because I'm pretty sure it's a week after the heroes versus villains that they go to the USJ. So skip to that. And I'm just going to be saying that on this particular occasion, Deku's sitting in the back seat, right? Uraraka's one of the last people to get on, and it just so happens that a seat next to Deku is the only one that's pretty much available. So what happens here? Pretty much Deku's just sitting there, he's looking out the window, not really worried about who's next to him, and Uraraka's like, hey, the seat taken? Deku looks at her and he's like, oh, no, actually, not really. She looks back and she's like, oh, well, mind if I sit here? And Deku's like, no, not at all. Uraraka then is all like, so what you doing? And Deku's like sitting on the bus just like you, and she's like, oh no, I mean here in UA. She begins to ask Deku why he's there and why he wants to become a hero. Deku looks at her nonchalantly, looks out the window, looks back at her, and is just like, oh well, that's a pretty simple question. I want to prove that I could become a hero, and I want to show a certain somebody that they were right to bank on me, and to show that I could be more than a petty criminal. And, she looks at him and she's like, petty criminal? What are you? And Deku's like, don't worry about it. What about you? And she's just like, oh, money. And Deku's like, I respect that. I mean, I would want to have money too. That's partially one of the reasons why I would also do it. And, Uraraka's like, oh, well, it's because we're struggling. And I'm like, trust me, I understand struggling. She then goes on to pretty much smile and, they both talk on their way to the USJ until eventually they find themselves inside. Bam. Purple mist just appears in the middle of the room and he's just like, hello heroes, right? Suddenly all the students are all like, whoa, fake villains. And Aizawa is just like, bro, these kids are dumb. But he jumps in the way, he jumps down towards the main villains, right? And he's like, 13, protect the kids, right? Suddenly Kirishima and Bakugo rush in trying to, hit Kurogiri, but they can't because he's missed. And what happens next is pretty much Deku just looks at Kurogiri as, he begins to pretty much try to use his portal ability, but Deku just pretty much hits him with the no Yu Uno reverse card and just goes full counter, right? Suddenly the portal grabs Kurogiri and sends him far to one of the directions he was going to send the students to. And then Deku is just like, whoa, so he was going to teleport people. Interesting. After this, Deku pretty much goes on to look at the classroom and simply say to get out of there. They're like, the door's closed, and Deku's like, not a problem. As he then rushes towards it and pretty much punches it one time, just shattering the door, fending the floors just go off flying, right? And the students look back to Deku, look at him, and they're like, what are you gonna do? Deku goes, I'm gonna take care of the mess. Somebody needs to help Aizawa, right? He looks at 13 and says, don't worry about him, that she knows how powerful he is. And 13 nods, and she's like, all right guys, let's go. Kurogiri didn't get the chance to even stop them, and so he teleports next to Shigaraki and just goes, bad news. The students, it appears that they have left the facility. Shigaraki scratches his neck. He's like, no fair, it's all that brat. He releases the Nomu, and he's like, Nomu, kill him. Suddenly this gigantic, like 7 to 8 feet tall Nomu just comes rushing in at him. This giant black bird. Oh my god, that sounded mad. Oh my god, I don't even care. But anyways, basically the gigantic Nomu just rushes towards the direction of Deku, right? And bro, I can't. I'm sorry. Usually I only make those types of jokes with the boys, but hey, it slipped out. Nah, but for real though, boys, basically what ends up happening is we have this gigantic Nomu, right? It's rushing towards the direction of Deku, and he goes over to throw a punch, right? He throws the punch at Deku. He pretty much sends Deku back flying, or actually, nah. Deku ain't no punk. He ain't finna just get knocked out like that. Nah, Deku straight stands there like a G and takes it. Like the punch hits him, and he's like, "So you gonna throw the punch yet?" Deku then says, "My turn." His eyes change to a demonic aura, and just bam, just straight whacks the Nomu one good time, sends it crashing into the wall, and the Nomu pretty much has its danger sense just going off the rails. Shigaraki orders it to rush at him, and even though the Nomu doesn't want to, it just rushes at Deku again. Deku grabs his sword that he pretty much specifically ordered from the heroes, which is essentially Lost Vein, as he goes on to multiply himself and rush in, just slashing using the 1000 Divine Sword Slash, right? The Nomu gets split into hundreds of pieces. Actually, pause, thousands, and Deku just stands there. Nomu just fell to pieces. Following this, Shigaraki looks to Deku, like pretty much begins to shit himself and is like, Kurogiri, now! As Shigaraki teleports out, the portal closes, but as it closes, Deku's right behind Shigaraki, just like, what a nice place you guys got here. Shigaraki turns around and he's like, what are you? But Deku grabs him by the face, and then one of his arm changes into the demonic aura as he grabs Kurogiri as well and just slams them both onto the ground. Shigaraki begins to pretty much grab at Deku's arm, 5 fingers, and he's like, you're gonna die, kid. Suddenly we see Deku just not be affected. He's just like, you think some weak, puny quirk like this is gonna do anything to me? I'm a demon. As he just smashes Shigaraki's face into the ground even more. And it's at this moment that All For One realizes something dangerous is going on, right? He's like, even he knows not to go over there near Deku because it's like, that's pretty much a death sentence. So All For One is just in his room. He's like freaking out. He's like, oh, Shigaraki's dead, bro. I'm not fighting that, man. He soloed the Nomu. Shigaraki's decay is not, All For One wants none of that smoke. You don't really want smoke. You ain't about that, like that basically. Like a really cool music starts playing in the background. And we basically just have Deku just like, looking like a total badass. This would be like an anime edit clip if we like had something like that around this time, right? And boys, the story's about to not make sense for the next like 20 seconds just because I'm texting my girl real quick. What was I gonna say? I don't know. Just give me a second, boys. All right, boys, I'm back. Anyways, though, so pretty much what ends up happening is Deku, after, grabbing Shigaraki and Kurogiri, just knocks both of them out and pretty much just calls the police. He's like, yeah, I don't really know where I'm at, but just ask Aizawa to track my phone. He should be able to find me. Authorities arrive and Shigaraki and Kurogiri, they're thrown in the slammer. Deku's praised for all of this. He goes viral in the news and Deku's just the talk of the town. Eventually, about a week would go by after the students return to school. And when everybody goes to observe the competition, everyone's all focused on Deku. He walks out of the classroom. He's the same stature that Deku would be in the original. I think I said he was taller, but I actually want to make him the same stature he was. He walks out and people are like, he's puny. Like, what? And, people are like, don't be fooled by his height. The dude is a beast. And Deku just walks by and he's like, oh, so you guys are the competition? Do your best. He walks away and suddenly everybody's just like, doesn't seem that threatening. But Deku just walks off with a smile on his face, and Ida catches up to him, asks him, why didn't you, why do you act this way? Why don't you act more superior like Bakugo? You have all this strength and for some reason you're nonchalant, non-caring, and humble about it. Why is that, Izuku? And Deku looks back to Ida. He sits down, he begins to munch on his food on the ground because all the tables were full. And he's like, well, honestly, Ida, I really could not care less what other people think about me. As long as I know that I'm a good person and that I can handle myself in the real world. Ida just goes, what do you mean the real world? And Deku's just like, you'll find out someday, Ida. You've probably lived a pretty privileged life considering your attitude and your family name. You're an ingenium, aren't you? Ida's like, what? How did you? And he's like, I've met your brother. He's a great guy. I feel like you have a lot of his qualities, but at the same time, it feels like you're trying to overcompensate for some. Maybe pull back just a little bit, Ida. Ida's like, you know what? You're kind of right. Maybe I should pull back just a little. Deku from here just goes on a pat Ida on the back and he's like, well, I'll catch you later, bud. I gotta go. He goes off and, uses the bathroom. He drops a nuke and suddenly he makes it's a demonic nuke. I don't know why I said that. But basically, Deku just goes over towards the direction of where the, goes towards the direction of where the, brain freeze. Okay, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, he goes towards the direction of where, Aizawa's classroom would be, and he goes on to ask him if, if he thinks anything regarding the UA Sports Festival. Aizawa tells Deku that as for the sports festival, he wants him to do his best. And, to hold back only if it involves students getting injured. Deku looks towards Aizawa and he's like, so, the guy who taught me not to hold back is suddenly trying to teach me to hold back. How ironic. Aizawa's like, don't push your luck, kid. And suddenly Deku's like, you know what, you're right. He walks away and suddenly he begins to pretty much get followed by a certain individual. This person would obviously be Uraraka, and she's just wondering what Izuku's up to, right? Nothing bad particularly, but she's just there watching Deku. We're going to be skipping over to the next day, and the next day they're pretty much at the UA Sports Festival, because why not? I could not be bothered to cover anything else, right? They're there, and when it comes to the race, boys, I'm pretty sure you guys know who's gonna win. I'm not about to go through the trouble of making this difficult race where Bakugo's close, Todoroki's close as well. Nah, Deku stomps. He's too fast. He's just too fast for them. The second that Todoroki went to slam his foot, by the time that his foot was halfway down, Deku was pretty much just blasted off and everybody got blown back. Todoroki's eyes shattered in an instant, and Deku just flew towards the direction of the finish line and landed in a similar fashion to when the 10 Commandments landed in front of Meliodas and, he was facing his ops. But basically something very, very similar to that certain situation would go down. And essentially all that happens following this is Deku gets the 10 million point headband. Now, I hate covering the cavalry battle, so I'm not going to cover it. And when it comes to the one-on-one battles, including Deku versus Shinso, Deku just stomps him. I'm sorry, but I don't care what anybody says. I doubt Shinso's mind control thing would work on Deku. Somebody who's so nonchalant that doesn't care about people's insults because that's how he wants his personality to be on the outside would not react to somebody saying, oh, you think you're so good because you have a powerful quirk or anything like that. Deku, in fact, does not care. So he just rushes, he's like, boop. He hits Shinso one good time and, knocks him out. Second battle, obviously Todoroki, but this time Todoroki doesn't have that information in his head thinking, oh, he must be all my secret love child. Nah, instead, he pretty much just tells Deku that from looking at things, from a different angle, it appears that Deku is stronger. But Todoroki's gonna do all he can to pretty much show Deku that he's not a pushover and he's gonna defeat him only using half of his power. Deku looks at him and he's like, all right, buddy, you do your best. And he taps him on the shoulder. Todoroki gets mad and, his cold side begins to flare up. And Deku's like, whoa, buddy, didn't mean to push your buttons there. My bad. Todoroki's like, sure. And he says, I'll see you at the ring, Deku. As suddenly, just Izuku just walks towards the direction of the outside, bumps into Bakugo and he's like, oh, how you doing? And Bakugo's like, just so you know, he's not the only one that's going to crush you. So if he doesn't beat you, I will. But let's just hope Icy Hot over there is not able to defeat you. Deku looks to Bakugo and he's like, noted. All right, so now I have 2 people that are gunning for me. What's gonna happen next? He walks towards the direction of where his friend groups at Uraraka and Ida, and they both basically go on to ask him, how he's doing today. Deku looks towards Uraraka and, she's smiling at him. She's giving him all the cues. Deku, he walks next to Uraraka. And, when they're walking towards the direction of the stadium, Izuku's just like, so, how do you feel about your match? Uraraka's like, honestly, I'm feeling great. I think I might win. And Deku's like, you don't gotta lie to me. Cheer up. As he smacks her one good time on the what, and she's like, oh, she gets quiet, her face grows red, and Izuku's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Uraraka's like, it's fine, she rubs the sides of her hair a little bit, and suddenly we then hear Izuku Midoriya up to the stage, and Izuku just looks back at her and he's like, well, that's my cue, gotta go.